Hello and good evening, everybody. This is John with WoW Support, coming to you with our 14th podcast. This is kind of an awesome thing. We made it past 10 by quite a bit, halfway into 20, more than halfway. Okay, I can't do math. It's kind of late tonight, but hey, we got a good show tonight. We've got a couple stories we're going to talk about. We've got our team with us. We've got Mike. He
Hey
is.
everybody.
I'm Marty.
Yep.
I'm Jackson.
And we have been doing WoW support work for quite a while, and this podcast is our way of bringing this information back to you, the viewer, the listener. We're happy to talk about a couple stories today, and we're gonna shape this up a little bit. I want each of us to kind of talk about something we're passionate about this week. I want to revisit the Crowdstrike. What do we call it? Snafu, debacle, uh, happenstance, whatever you want to call it. I want to talk a little bit about that. Mike, what do you want to talk about?
Actually, it's kind of a little bit related. We found out that Secureboot on a number of machines is fallible, has some bad information that was in the firmware that allows Secureboot to be bypassed. Not cool.
I think that the phrase I remember reading was "don't ship" in the code.
Do not trust.
Do not trust.
Do not trust.
Oh, what a interesting situation there. Artie, what do you have for us?
Well, there's something that I've been following for a long time now, and it's had many iterations, but it's called the Kids Online Safety Act, and it is at the core a censorship bill that just passed.
It's not law yet. It's past one of the hurdles to get there, though. So this will be an interesting one. Jackson, what are you doing with us today?
I don't have anything specific, but I will certainly have plenty of questions for you guys. I'm pretty curious about what we all have to say about each thing. Plus, I don't think we'll have too much time to spare, so I will be here to challenge your ideas.
I love the challenge. It's good to have our thoughts and our assumptions challenged from time to time. And Jackson, you've brought some fantastic questions to the table over the past several podcasts. I look forward to hearing your insightful questions.
Well, I hope to continue.
So it's going to be awesome. So I think let's dive into CrowdStrike. I think all of us know somebody that was affected with CrowdStrike. I got to listen to a couple podcasts and read a couple things on how this came about. The idea that we should test before we release software. Well, it actually was tested. They have a pretty good battery at CrowdStrike to run it through. They even have an AI system built in to validate the functionality of the driver files as they're released. And this bug was just crafted just right that it made pass through all the validation steps and went into full production. But yeah, what was your experience on that, Jackson, out there at college? What did you see happen?
I actually caught absolutely nothing of it. It didn't affect me, although I did hear a lot of our systems on campus did go down. Nothing that I actually interact with. I have a friend of mine, and he works for the news channel here on campus, and so he actually just kind of sits there and watches the screen. He says, "Yeah, whenever CrowdStrike update went through, everything just went black." And so there were certainly some people that were affected. I personally wasn't, but that's the way it goes.
Well, that seems to be what's going on. I went in when we evaluated our technology stack. CrowdStrike was quickly dismissed because it didn't have the entire tool set that we needed for what we were doing. It's part of a more comprehensive enterprise security system. So you're going to see this at the the Fortune 500 companies and TV channels, TV stations, you know, the mission critical stuff. So I don't know. I'm actually thinking maybe I do want to look at a system like CrowdStrike, because they've got an EDR system that lets you know, enhanced recovery, managed recovery on systems. It was interesting watching the world kind of blink out with one errant update. Having, what was it, 8 million computers go offline spontaneously, each one requiring hands-on. That actually, when we talked about it last week, that's not correct. CrowdStrike's system has an online connection at the boot up, and they were able to update 500,000 computers automatically. So you didn't have to do the boot in safe mode recovery method. Their team was on the ball, and in the middle of the crisis, there's stories of people calling in to get tech support, and somebody answers the phone. A knowledgeable person answers the phone in 10 minutes. So
That's impressive.
I gotta tip my hat to the response.
Yeah, to actually get a hold of somebody during that kind of a crisis with you know, as many people affected as there were, to actually be able to get on the line with somebody, that's you gotta give them credit for that.
Yeah, technology is one of those things where you're almost guaranteed to have a crisis at some point. Your phone's going to fall out of your pocket, smash its screen. Your computer's not going to boot someday. Your internet goes down at an inopportune moment. You're going to have a crisis. It's not the cause, it's not the problem, it's not the technology, it's how did the company solve my problem? That to me is the measure of a company. It's not that you're in crisis, it's how do you manage yourself through and out of the crisis. And I got to tip my hat to them, because by and large they got the world back online pretty quick. It took days, don't get me wrong. There was some manual stuff that had to happen and really disrupted things. But Jackson, let me ask you the question. Would you rather deal with a blue screen boot loop issue or ransomware attack?
I'll take I hate both of those. Both of those are terrible. But
What's option 3?
I'll take the boot loop, because the boot loop I can even, you know, troubleshoot myself, right? I mean, there's things I can do. Hardware, on the hardware side, you know, you can boot into safe mode. There's some things you can do. If you get hit with ransomware, it's a pretty helpless feeling, I think, you know, to know that somebody else is now in control of your data, right? And that's why you put measures in place so that that actually doesn't ever happen, and that even though someone might temporarily gain control, you have a backup plan. But yeah, I mean, I'll take the boot. That sounds so terrible. I'll take the boot loop.
I'll take the boot loop for 500. Mike, let me add a new dimension to this thought. What if it's a boot loop versus ransomware, but I give you the recipe of how to break out of that boot loop within 5 hours of it happening?
I'll take the boot loop. I mean, I don't know. The thing with the boot loop is that even if I'm in a boot loop or the machine won't boot, I've got a hard drive. I've got a backup plan to recover. I can recover data off that hard drive. I can slap it into something else and just say, look, we'll just consider this machine a loss, and I'm just going to get the data off of it that I need and run up a new machine, spin up a new machine. You know,
Mm-hmm.
at least I have that option. With the ransomware, a lot of times with ransomware, your data's been encrypted. Only the person issuing the ransom has the key to unlock that. So yeah, I might be able to salvage the data, and unless there's somewhere out there that knows how to decrypt that data might be a loss, and that might be very, very damaging to me. I can spin up a new laptop, you know, $300 to $1,000 for a new laptop or a computer or something. That's not a big deal compared to losing I can't even put a value on what some data might be worth out there, you know.
Well, and it's not just your data, it's the fact that your data is now in somebody else's hands and they're
And
going
if
to
they
publish
can
it.
decrypt it and use it and get into it, then that's even worse because now what are they going to do with it now that they have it?
Yeah. So if we had the choice of boot loop, ransomware, or Jackson, I love what you're saying with none of the above. If we know that technology is going to have a glitch, and you build that plan, and technology has a glitch, I would much rather have a cushion of safety instead of a cushion of, gosh, my data's exposed and I've got no control of it now. So in my mind, it's more of do I want to have trying to say here, do I want to have my destiny in my hands, or do I want to have my destiny in the hands of a threat actor who's trying to get money out of me?
Yeah. Now, I mean, what we're looking at is we're comparing, do I want to deal with an inconvenience, maybe a major inconvenience,
Oh yeah.
versus a catastrophe or a major catastrophe? And everybody's always going to pick the major inconvenience over the major catastrophe. Now, a company like an airline might not see it that way because in the middle of a major inconvenience, they are losing tons of money. I mean, you look at I think Delta was brought up earlier. Delta has a problem with getting passengers their tickets. Passengers want refunds because they can't get on the airplane. Maybe they're, instead of waiting until they can get on the airplane, they're just choosing an alternate form of transportation. They go rent a car, they go find a bus or a train or something that's going to take them in the general direction where they want to go. Or if the passengers are waiting but they can't get on the plane, they're not in their home city, they got to be put up in a hotel. And they want compensation for that because Delta's on the hook for not being able to get them their ticket. So we got costs of losing the passengers altogether, refunding tickets, putting people up in hotels, plus having to pay their IT team whatever money they pay them to dive in and to solve the problem as quick as they can. I mean, that's a lot of money being expended just for this major inconvenience. To a financial guy, it is a major catastrophe.
Absolutely. And it's one of those, I mean, let's take the airline. If there was a weather storm, a tornado hits or something, it's going to be localized to one area. This hit everybody. Like
Mhm.
big fat tornado took down all the airplanes at the same time. Nobody died, thankfully. But the I think the idea that everything has to work 100% all the time, that's a great goal. I don't know that technology is going to get us there. I mean, let's diverge a minute. Microsoft has patched hundreds of known vulnerabilities that are critical vulnerabilities this year alone. They didn't put them in there on purpose, but they're being exploited in the wild. Now, and that goes to another piece. CrowdStrike took down millions of computers, but Windows is running all those computers, and Windows, not all versions of Windows have CrowdStrike. If Microsoft has a mistake, that could actually take down the world. So
Mhm.
I would hate
Yeah,
to be
and
Microsoft in that moment.
just for reference, July alone, I was looking earlier today, because they released their reports, 143 CVs for July alone, and that's a high number. Usually when we're looking at it, it's around 50. Obviously, we would like that number to be zero, but like you're saying, it's never going to be there. But I mean, July alone was a big one too.
And what is a CVE?
Artie, I think you actually know the answer to that a little bit better than I do. If you want to actually explain it, I know the general idea, but I think you can probably put it into words better than I can.
I'll bring up the website 1 second.
So CVEs are it's a way of explaining the vulnerability threat level. Think of it like a Richter scale. So earthquake, you get a 4-pointer, you can barely feel the ground moving. You get a 6-pointer, you can really feel the ground moving. A 10 on the Richter scale, civilization is gone. So CVEs are a 0 to 10 scale. Artie, what's CVE stand for us?
Yeah, you're asking me, and I don't know. I read the
Oh,
I read the acronym so many times that
Common vulnerabilities and exposures.
thank you, Mike.
Mike's faster on the Google. And I got distracted by a phone. That is embarrassing, ladies and gentlemen. This is going to get turned off
And
and
every
thrown out the window.
CVE is given a number. Typically, I believe it proceeds with the year that it's discovered. So we're in 2024 law, and we're going to be coming up as 2024s, and then it's just a serial number to track it.
Yep.
A unique identifier, and as those get resolved and patched, I mean, you'll see that the software and firmware and hardware vendors even, they'll address them by that identifier and say this patch addresses CVE number, and it'll explain. So it's a good way to know that you're protected against specific types of vulnerabilities and exposures.
And who is it
Well,
that creates CVE?
Well,
it was
there's
NIST for a long time.
the one
Who's
that
doing it now?
I think it's a joint effort between NIST and is it MITRE.org?
I know it's not
And
just one organization. It's a conglomeration of them.
and also Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency, or CISA.
CISA.
It's a joint effort by a lot of groups that are trying to limit the damage that can be done.
And is CISA, that's
So
a government organization, is it not?
U.S.
Yeah.
government organization, yes.
So Mike, we're talking vulnerabilities, and you talked about one that you want to bring up.
So Secureboot,
BitLocker.
and not BitLocker, Secureboot. So Secureboot is on your computer nowadays with the UEFI firmware that we're now using, because we kind of moved away from the old BIOS firmware that runs the basic BIOS, came from basic input output system, right? It was the way that the operating system would be able to talk to the hardware, kind of an interface through that and everything. And it's also the thing that's responsible for booting up the computer, that when every computer starts up, it has a basic instruction to say the very, very first thing you're going to do is you're going to look in either a memory location, or you're going to access a drive or hard drive at a specific location to find a set of instructions of what to do next. And from there, that's where it starts your boot process to start up the computer. Secureboot is set up so that only authorized and trusted operating systems or software or firmwares or whatever you want to call them are allowed to boot on that computer. And the way we determine if it's authorized is with a set of cryptographic keys that are installed with the firmware. So if it passes a signature of keys, then we can say, okay, that's trusted. It passes the test. We can allow that to boot. If someone tries to install some malware or something that's trying to take over the boot process, then that key signature is not going to match. And it's going to say, hey, whoa. Something's changed in the way that this system boots or whatever, and we're not going to trust it now because it can't match the signature. Well, what happened here is that the firmware shipped on several devices with what they call test keys. And the keys are even marked. The website I'm looking at, Ars Technica, has a screenshot of one of these certificates or these keys that says, do not trust. And then it says it's a test key. It's basically just for testing purposes only. Do not trust. And so since these are development type keys, then there's a likely chance that lots of people could have access to them and use it to sign an operating system or a particular version of operating system that could do harm to your computer and allow something to be installed that you don't want to have on your operating system. So, and
So
it
if
kind of goes back to a little bit about the CrowdStrike thing, because if I remember right, the CrowdStrike thing, it wasn't necessarily the compiled code of CrowdStrike. It wasn't the drivers or the actual executable code. Wasn't it just a particular piece of content that CrowdStrike had pushed out that then caused the code to crash?
it caused simply said, it caused a memory look in the wrong place,
Mm-hmm.
which was out of bounds for part of the operating system.
Mm-hmm.
The operating system said, no, you can't. I said, fine, I'm going to take my ball and go home.
Right.
So
And so this gets me to in software development, when you're trying to test programs, you're trying to think of all the different ways. How can somebody break this or use this in a way that is not correct? Okay, Jackson, I know you've recently taken a couple programming classes, right? And you
Yeah.
try to think about, okay, I've got a user sitting down at the computer, they're going to use my program, but I don't, if I let them type in anything, anything might not work. I'm only looking for a number, but what's going to happen if they type in letters? Will my program still be able to process that, or will it cause my program to crash? And so you try to write your program to trap all those instances of, well, okay, if they type in a letter and I was expecting a number, then we need to handle that a certain way. We need to let the user know, hey, you typed in a letter, we need a number, please try again. And so you think of all these different scenarios of what happens if they do this, what happens if they do that, what if they click their mouse over here, they click over here. And sometimes your program is so complex that you can't possibly think of every possible test case. And so you try to write other programs to help test your software for you. And in some cases, the input you need to be able to test, like in this case, with a signature or keys or something like that. But you don't want to have to test it with actual keys that are actually used in production, because you don't want those to get out. You want to just have like a test key, say, I just need to test this to make sure it's doing what it's supposed to. The idea being that once you're done testing, you take that test piece of data out and you set it back to the production values before you ship it. Obviously, in this case, with some versions of firmware, that didn't happen. They didn't take out the test data, they left it in there, and now it's out in the wild.
So this is like, let's see if we can get an analogy here, and see if I understand this correctly. This would be like shipping a car to a dealership and having a master key for the ignition so that anybody can sit down and park the car in the parking lot and get ready to sell it. And then somebody later would have to come along and rekey the car so that you can sell that to John, to Artie, to Jackson, and they have the only key for that car. Is that about right?
That could be it. You know, a master key that, you know, the guy has to go around, he has to test all the ignition switches. He's given one key, it just fits the ignition, it works no matter what. Yep, ignition works, ignition works. But if they forget to rekey that car for the specific key assigned to that car, then there's a potential that if that master key, if people know about that master key or know a secret code of like, oh, you just do this, and it's like you don't even need a key.
I know the
How
secret
many
handshake.
people do you know that can just stick a screwdriver in the ignition and start the car? You know, I mean, that's kind of what it
I,
turns
I
into.
plead the fifth on that question. I will not
Mhm.
answer that.
So, Mike, like with this vulnerability, right? So, is it coming from, like for example, our motherboard manufacturers like Asus or Gigabyte, or where is this problem stemming from? Who's the one that's manufacturing and has let this leak out essentially?
It's Ars Technica reports that the compromise of the key is part of a much bigger supply chain breakdown that raises serious doubts about the integrity of Secureboot on more than 300 devices, additional device models. Okay. So anything containing this key and
Yes,
well,
I
let's
wonder, is
I'm
it
just
Dell
trying to
or
get to the thing here. I believe that
Yes.
it's just in a firmware. So
right.
So
But does
it
everyone
is
create their own,
Dell.
or is there someone who say, I make a ton of secure boot, firmware, and then that gets distributed across several manufacturers?
Well, and I don't want to sound too apologetic for the manufacturers, but I mean, to answer your question, MSI, Supermicro, Dell, all the big players were victim to this mistake. The the challenge here is somebody's got to go into the firmware and do some pretty heavy-handed coding to get these keys, the test keys out and the correct keys in.
Right.
Um, but the supply chain glitch, the chips showed up with a functional administrative key. Why would we replace it? It's like to go back to the car analogy. It's why would I replace the master key that's in my hand with a new master key for us? We've got one.
Mm-hmm.
Why take the 50 hours, 100 hours, or because it's firmware, it fundamentally changes the way that the computer runs. Uh, uh, think of the development cycle you got to go through when you put a new firmware together, or look at it from the top down. You have to go through validation on every piece of hardware that will attach to that computer, all the drivers. You have to
Mm-hmm.
validate all that, or just take it as it is and just run with the master key. So I
right.
could see somebody cutting corners.
And the article I'm reading, Ars Technica, also reports that there have been other instances where hardware manufacturers have had instances where the keys have been somehow compromised other way, like the legitimate keys, the ones that are supposed to be there, somehow make it into the wild, and so then provide bad actors an exploit into those specific, brands of hardware or firmware that they're publishing. So it's it's no different than someone stealing the keys to your car and then making their own copy at that point. So, you know,
So
if
the
if
risk,
you are affected, watch for patches, watch for updates to your firmware, and run as many updates as you can to get yourself up to date.
yeah, I think that's kind of been our mantra the last 2 years is update now because the problems will be figured out soon.
Mhm.
CrowdStrike would be a great example. Yeah, it's do you want to risk vulnerability to ransomware, or do you want to be up and running and current? Um, Sometimes that bites you, sometimes it doesn't. I would rather be bitten by a company that is on the hook to give me the fix quick than bitten by somebody who doesn't care about me and just wants my money.
Mhm.
So, I mean, this firmware thing, I would say, um, if you're affected by it, it is a problem. But to really cause problems on your computer, it's not a remote compromise. Is that right? There's no remote vector to crack into somebody's computer. You got to have physical access.
Indirectly, so one instance I could think of is that let's just say that if secure boot is the only lines of defense that you have and you're not practicing good cybersecurity hygiene, that I believe we talked about that last week. What's your cybersecurity hygiene, cyber hygiene, or whatever you want to call it? And let's say that you go into that email that's just came from that stranger and they sent you that random attachment and you open that random attachment and it turned out to be executable code. Well, that executable code at that point may have altered your operating system. Now, ideally, the way it should work is that if it altered the way that that operating system boots, that secure boot would detect that and prevent the machine from booting in a perfect world. Maybe there's other things that they've done to circumvent that, but without having um, the right cryptographic keys, then just practicing good hygiene is going to keep you protected. But in the case that you have something slip by and secure boot's also compromised, in an incident in accident investigations, I've watched a lot of YouTube videos, mostly with like dealing with airplane accidents, and they always talk about the Swiss cheese model. Okay. And the Swiss cheese model is basically like if you take several slices of Swiss cheese at random, not from the same block, but just at random, and you stack them up, if it turns out that out of 6 slices of Swiss cheese that the holes just happen to line up to allow you to go straight through all 6 slices, that's where you have the problem. That's why an accident happens, is because all the fail safes failed at that point to keep you protected, and the line of events went straight through every hole of Swiss cheese. Okay. So this is why we keep, saying, keep your computer updated with the latest updates. Run a reputable antivirus or anti-malware software package on your system. Use good cybersecurity habits. Don't click on strange emails. Don't give out your information to strangers. And even with beyond your computer, if you're getting phone calls, don't talk to strangers. Make sure that you have a secure password on all the different websites. Use a password manager so that you don't have to remember all the complex passwords. You can keep it in one secure location. All sorts of different things to protect yourself so that we can make it so that we don't have the Swiss cheese holes all lining up and you end up being victim to an attack.
That's the big thing. How to stay safe while you're surfing online. And I'd love to actually use that as a segue point. Artie, you have something with protect the kids while they're online, right? You want to talk about
So, yeah,
what's the acronym?
for as long as there's been an internet, there have been people wanting to protect the safety of the people that are on it, especially those that are children. And the Kids Online Safety Act is a bill that has been in and out of, getting redesigned over the past few years. And the version that I am most familiar with is an older version. I have not seen everything that they've added to the new one, but they apparently have gotten rid of the security flaws that were attached to it, which would have been, backdoors into email servers, stuff like that. Which, you know, you don't want backdoors into something that's encrypted, that because it's not a matter of if it will be circumvented or exploited, it's a matter of when for any backdoor. So the bill as it has currently passed the Senate is still a very, I want to say, ham-fisted approach towards addressing trying to find the right words.
So if I could step in, I
Please.
think I know where you're going with this. It is using the wrong tool for the job. If you're using a can of beans as a hammer.
I wouldn't say that. I would say that it's not addressing the issue at hand. It is trying
Yeah.
to it's like using a medical analogy. They're treating just the symptoms without looking for causes, and instead of it being on the users, or in this case the users and their parents, to help mitigate things, it is putting all of the onus onto the people that run the sites, people that run websites, and that is
And
going to
That makes sense from a high level perspective, right? You want to make sure that the sites are designed with good intents.
Yes,
But
but
where's the
if you,
pitfall in this?
I'm sorry.
Where's the pitfall?
Well, one of the big pitfalls would be, you've got a smaller site. Say you want to create a site that sells, hats to the general public. You've got new regulations that you're going to have to fall under to make sure that you are not um, causing harm to people that are visiting your site. And that is a very vague and open interpretation, and it will change depending upon who is in the FTC at the time, because this will effectively be run by a board that is put together in the FTC. So it will be very politically charged depending upon who is in power at the time as to what is considered harmful. You've got a hat that has a rainbow on it. That could be considered harmful depending upon who gets in there. You've got a hat that's got a cross on it. Same thing. It's very dependent on subjective and not objective observations.
So the harm that could befall the kids is harm perceived, not harm intended.
Precisely.
That makes me think of
Okay.
that movie. Oh no, it's kind of old now. I've seen it. It's been a long time, but they essentially, they arrest people before they even commit crimes, and they have somebody who
Minority
sees the
Report.
future.
Minority
That's the
Report.
one. At that point, if I understood you correctly, it's almost like we're trying to stop things from, which is, again, it's a good thing. Yeah, we should be trying to prevent things, right? But um, when you do that in a subjective way, then you start infringing upon a lot of the rights that we've established as a country, right? With the First Amendment. Um, well, I guess maybe I should ask that question. So, say the FTC or this board they're talking about, they rule that my small site that I've uploaded for mostly personal use is a harm to kids. Which I guess is a loaded question. There's a lot of definitions there, but say they decide that my site's harmful, what happens to me as a site owner?
So, what I can gather from I'm looking at the Electronic Frontier Foundation's rundown on it. Um,
I love their work. They always do good things to help protect the internet from getting too off its base.
so, a lawsuit would be filed against you, um, stating that you've got to remove the harmful content from the site, and if you don't, you can face penalties up to and including having the site taken down, and depending upon the severity of the content that they claim is on the site, I would also assume that you might get jail time,
Hmm.
which if you're
That seems hard to quantify or exactly define. I'm not saying this against you, but
Mhm.
I mean, how do they decide what's harmful if within the bounds of the First Amendment? Because there are a lot of things that are protected underneath the First Amendment. So how do they justify that?
Oh,
Or
good.
So when it comes to the
I'll
First
cut you off
Amendment,
there.
when
I'll
it comes
cut
to
you
the
off there,
First
guys.
Amendment and
I
this one,
don't want to I don't want to get political on this
so
because that discussion is being acted out in courts and law.
mhm,
That's not a debate I want to get into.
yeah.
Let's let's focus on the tech side of things because where I could see this going sideways is yeah, great. We've got U.S. laws. That's not international laws. How do you protect harm from um, a South American based website? Does this commission have the ability to go shut down something out there?
Um, so using existing European laws that have recently been passed and have recently been facing a lot of challenges like that, more than likely it would end up with a complete site block. So there would
So they
be
would have to reach out to service providers inside the country and say, don't allow communication with
exactly.
XYZ company.
or just these this website address and these IP addresses associated with that website.
It's an interesting time we live in where censorship rules over.
Sounds really subjective instead
And
of objective, and
I
Well,
am
that
not
almost
I'm not
sounds a
saying
little
this
bit
with any political charge one way or the other, but it will be strongly dependent upon who is in office as
Mhm.
to what is deemed inappropriate.
right. Well, and that makes me
And
think
that's
of the whole thing with Russia creating a subnet, right? Is that what this is going to start looking like then if we start blocking sites, is that going to turn into now the US subnet
yeah. I think the term that they're starting to use is splinternet
or
because
splinternet?
it's
Yeah.
no longer connected. It's connected, but not in a glorious way. The global village is being tribalized.
from being the perspective of, I'm a father, I've got kids. I'm very concerned about what they might or might not be looking at on the internet. I don't I don't like seeing regulation of the internet, because every time we bring up regulation of the internet, it's almost like never a good thing. It's to put the control to a small group of people, and there may even be a lot of monetary reasons behind it too. And I don't like to see that. I like being able to use a free and open internet. I understand that there's risks that come with that. That if I want to be able to use a free and open internet, well, then so should the guy down the street who wants to post his questionable content. What I want to see from my government is I want to see a, somehow a way for them to give me the tools to do what I need to do to protect my children. Yes, I'm all for protecting children. I don't need my government to protect my children for me. I want to be able to have the control to say, I will protect my children because I am their parent. I
Mhm.
just need the tools to be able to do it. So, for example, one thing I would love to have is I would love to have a tool on YouTube to block a specific channel or set of channels. Not because I don't agree with not because their content is questionable or anything. It's just I don't want my kids watching that channel. It may be fine for older teenagers and even adults to watch that channel, and there may even be nothing legally wrong with it at all. But I just would rather my kids watch something a little more wholesome, a little more constructive, that makes better use of their time. Okay.
You,
I
you
don't
you don't
need to
want a
watch.
3-year-old watching Five Nights at Freddy's?
No, 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 not at all. I don't want them watching stuff where it's just mindless screaming while they play a video game the whole time. Like, if I want my kids to enjoy the video game, don't watch somebody else play. I will get you the video game and I'll let you play the video game. You don't need to watch somebody else play the video game. I think that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen, is watching other people play video games. Okay. But it's just things like that. I want to be able to control the content. There are certain websites that my wife and I would like to be able to visit for resources, but it's for stuff that is on an adult level that I don't need my kids looking at. They don't need to be worrying about adult level things at their age. They don't need to be worrying about how to pay your taxes and or whatever else. There's just,
Medical journals and
yeah,
you know,
it's just
politics.
I want the ability, yeah. Or, maybe we're trying to learn about, the conflicts that are going on across the world, but I don't need my kids stressing out about if a nuclear bomb's going to fall on their head. I want them to just enjoy their childhood. So I want the tools to be able to protect them so they don't accidentally wander into areas that's going to cause them concern.
Well, that's kind of the big thing is, should the government put their hands in and do this for us, or should the free market have it? There's arguments on both sides. I think there should be penalties if a company says will protect the kids and they don't.
Mhm.
I think there should be. Well, I mean, I think we're getting into an age where the content laws the FCC had don't apply to YouTube or other streaming services. We've had debates, very heated political debates, not on this channel, but I've seen them on other channels about the what is it, Section 240? The
Safe harbor
immunity
law.
from prosecute. What's that?
The safe harbor
Yep.
exception.
So Twitter doesn't get sued for having inappropriate materials or hateful content put on it. But Twitter and Facebook, they're not newspapers. They're not news sources. They're not telephone wires. They're not internet providers. They're content filters. We've developed a whole new genre, a whole new layer of communication by virtue of these platforms. It's not your cable internet provider, and it's not the original content producer. It's something in between. So what rules do we have that protect us? You give us that mechanism to file a lawsuit if we need to, or protect our children. We don't have those tools. But Mike, I'm with you. I don't want the government coming in and telling me how to raise my kids.
Mhm.
So,
Or worse yet, protecting my kids from things that may no longer be okay. So like, let's take 9/11, and I'm not getting political on this whatsoever, but the ethnicity of the attack turned into a massive let's censor Muslims. During World War II, let's put all the Japanese and Asian descent people, let's put them in internment camps. There's always a knee-jerk reaction. Do we really want to give that control to our government to say, and no Japanese people can ever talk on the internet until we say they can? That's real heavy-handed, and I just don't think the government should have that kind of power over anybody. Okay, I got political.
that's perfectly fine with this. The one thing that I was going to branch out into is um, so there are you can stop me if you don't want me talking about this, but there have been laws that have been passed that limit or that will require in some states for people to submit age verification to visit certain websites.
Unless you get the entire internet to agree to a common tool, that system's broken before it starts.
So one company has been pulling out of those states, and it's not
Mhm.
because they don't agree with the law, it's because they have the same mentality that you do. And also, they do not feel that
Oh,
the
great. I'm one of them.
no, they
I
do
mean,
not feel that the things that the tools that they're being given are going to keep users safe.
Well,
So,
you've got to submit your driver's license.
to a
yeah.
Or I
third
could sneak
party,
onto dad's desk and grab his driver's license when he's not looking and scan that in for me.
and it's a third party company that does not have a good track record for keeping breaches out. It's stuff like that.
Well, I mean, if there's been any one common thread in hacking, it's you can misrepresent yourself,
Mhm.
hide your identity, and nobody will catch you no matter how many millions of dollars you extort from your victims. The tools are out there to hide yourself.
And we've got all kinds of people posing as teenagers when in fact they are middle-aged adults
You can just say Chris
trying
Hansen.
to. I mean, yeah. I wasn't going there, but
Well, and
I
you've got the
mean,
other way too. You've got kids going
and you've got
to
kids
adult.
pretending to be adults. Yeah, I mean, I know of a kid that was, how should I put this? was in my neighborhood, and his parents let him have a Facebook account. Now, Facebook, you have to be at least, I think it's 13 is the minimum age
Yep.
to sign up for a Facebook account, right? Well, for the longest time, he was 27 years old. Because, I mean, all it is just a form. Put in your birth date. Well, I'll put in my birth date, but I'm not going to put the right year. I'm just going to put in, 1952, whatever you want to put that makes you old enough to be on Facebook.
I'm 257 years old.
Don't look a day over 250.
That's good. Camera adds a few years,
If,
right?
if everybody used the honor system, we wouldn't even be having this discussion. So,
Well, and that's an interesting thought there. If everything we did online was 100% traced back to the person who did it, we wouldn't be having these conversations. The fact that there is anonymity on the internet leads itself to errant and not errant, but malfeasance. Leads itself to causing harm to people. But if everything I type, everything I say, everything I looked at was open and free source for everybody, there would be a lot less crime in the world, at least online.
And there would also be
I
a
think
lot less people online.
this is true. There's a thought put in the movie The Surrogates. Did you see that one? Any of you?
I haven't.
No.
Oh gosh, that's an interesting one. So the premise of the movie is you have robot avatars. So you sit at home and you connect into this robot that has cameras for eyes. It looks like you. It walks around as you. You can touch things, interact. And your surrogate goes and interacts in the dangerous world while you sit at home, living inside this avatar with a full, headset like you see in most sci-fi films. You're virtually out there. Well, one of the ideas they had was crime went to zero because every crime could be investigated. The recording of who was in that avatar, who was in that space, what were they doing, it's all 100% tracked. So if you steal a candy bar from a grocery store or you run your car into you cause an accident, it doesn't happen. Murders disappear because you're killing a robot. But the idea that everything being tracked leads to people just decide to not live with the consequence. It's an interesting one.
Well, tell me, tell me a little bit more about like what that might look like. If we're tracking everybody where that information is being um, released or saved, who's holding it? And so, because that feels like a big risk. I couldn't tell you exactly right now, exactly why I don't like that, but something about that makes me feel uneasy.
feels a little Big Brother-ish, doesn't it?
It does.
Oh, it
And
does.
who is
And
the big brother?
that's the problem is, okay, let's say 100% everybody is fully they're not anonymous, anti-anonymous, public record. We'll just say public. Everything's free and open source. If one person figures out how to cloak themselves, they can commit the perfect crime.
Mm-hmm.
If the knowledge is out there and it's in the world's hands, great. But human nature prevents that. Somebody's going to want to hide something. I mean, how many times have you seen, Mike? How many times have you seen your kid hiding a piece of candy behind a piece of furniture? They turn it and they eat the candy. Like human nature, we want what we want, and we're going to find out a way to do it and not get caught.
But personally, I also I don't want everybody knowing where I'm going for lunch or dinner, right? I think that relies also on a perfect real world, right? Where no one's out there. If everyone knows where I'm at all the time, well, who's to say they're not going to come and try and rob my house and ransack me, while I'm out? If everyone knows where I'm at, right?
Ooh, Jackson's on vacation. He's not at his house.
Right.
Yeah.
Or Jackson's investing a lot of money in this or spending lots of money here. I don't want lots of people to know that. So I think that's what the biggest stop to that idea is that idea of privacy, right? Everyone likes their privacy, whether or not it's necessary or not.
Well, and I would equate privacy with freedom.
Mm-hmm.
You're free to do what you want without judgment or persecution from anybody around you. If I want to go to In-N-Out Burger and have the most inglorious, unhealthy burger I can for my diet, I'm going to go do that. But if I know everybody that is going to have an opinion about how I'm falling off my diet, or just eating the wrong thing for the time of day, or they got their own personal beliefs that they're putting on me. There's some dietitians that say you shouldn't eat after a certain time of day. So do I want them pointing out that I'm eating at the wrong time of day?
Or do
We're all
you
gonna
want
find
to?
out John's guilty pleasure is eating ice cream for breakfast.
The
One of them.
the other aspect of that is, do you want a government agency saying that that is now illegal, or that you went to In-N-Out, so they can't serve this thing anymore? You can't get that
John can
anymore
have anything but ice cream for breakfast.
intravenously.
Ice cream intravenously. That's just pours it. It's not a moment on the lips and forever on the hips. That's just forever on the hips without the guilty pleasure.
Yeah, it's not even worth it at that point.
So I guess my perspective on all this is, do we trust the people? Let's go back to your thought on that, Jackson, with who's in charge of the data. Do we trust our government to be in charge of the data? Do we trust the government, our elected officials, to be in charge of what is right and what is wrong? I like checks and balances. I like having the ability to do what I want, but do I want an oversight committee? Do I want a technology group on top of that saying, okay, John went to In-N-Out and had ice cream for breakfast? That's not what I want. I think people are smart and people can live free, and gosh, this got political pretty quick, didn't it? So I don't know. Let's circle back to Artie's thing. It's to keep kids safe online. How do we do that?
Well, I think like Mike said, right? It's an individual thing that everyone's going to have to do. It's a matter of how do we make sure everyone has those tools and that knowledge. And I think that's what it really comes down to. And that's the best solution where with the world that we live in today, right? Where, you don't have to put trust in one single organization or government or person, right? You can be the chooser of your own destiny. And so, what that looks like is you educate yourself on, how a firewall works and what your network's going to look like and what kind of controls you can put on that if you have kids, to instill some sort of safety.
Hmm.
Yeah, and that's one of the things. Let's find education and empowerment. Let's teach people how things work and how to protect themselves. Parents should absolutely have control over their kids to make sure that they're surfing to the right places or not.
And as you say that, maybe it's something you know because like Mike said, he would prefer that his government does something to rather give him the tools, right? And maybe, something that I see that could be a very positive thing that I think is often missing is cybersecurity in public schools, right? Teach the kids, teach the public what good cybersecurity practices look like, right? I had to take a civics class in high school. Why shouldn't we all have to take also, cybersecurity? It's something we all use. It's something we all interact with. Uh, how can we educate our public and our citizens to, be safe.
And maybe it becomes a part of that civics class, how to be a good internet citizen. I mean,
Yeah.
really.
And I think it's fundamental. It's how to be a good human
Mhm.
and treat each other with
Absolutely.
respect, treat each other with, you know, golden rule, right? Do unto
Yep.
others. Now, kids, they definitely need their hand held a little bit. They need a lot more shelter in some cases. Um, there's just some things they're not ready for in this world. But I don't know, giving power to one regulatory agency over the entire globe just seems like the wrong tool for the job.
Seems very short-sighted.
Doesn't lead where I think it was intended to lead. Well, and speaking of where leading in places we didn't intend it to, we got a little political, we got a little passionate. It's always a good thing. I love technology and how it empowers us to learn and do and explore this world in ways we couldn't otherwise. The global village has gotten smaller, but I think to everybody here, we're all interested in cybersecurity. We're all interested in education. We want to lift the technical awareness. Gosh, I was on a roll there for a minute. The technical awareness of the world, the technical prowess. We want to make this world a better place. But if you want to stay tuned, we're going to keep on this train. We're going to talk more about how to keep yourself safe, how to keep everybody around you safe, and make sure that the internet's a positive experience for everybody. But I think we should wrap up the podcast. I've been impressed with our team and the conversation we've had. Mike,
No
what do you
parting
think?
thoughts for me. You've already heard my 2 cents and a little bit more. So there you go.
There you go. We got 3 cents from Mike. Jackson, how many pennies we got from you?
None. But I think we had a great discussion, and so interested to see, what happens in the coming months and years.
It's going to be an exciting time. Artie, I'm going to let you have the last word and wrap this up.
Can I get change? My 2 cents worth?
Fractions of a penny.
Just like in Superman
Awesome.
3.
Well,
Yep, that's right.
it's a good movie. Well, I'm going to say good night and sign off to everybody. If you like the content here and want to see more, please subscribe. Hit a like and share it out if you think it's worth it for somebody else to hear what we talked about tonight. And otherwise, we'll see you next time on episode 15. Have a good
See
night.
everybody.
Later.
Bye.